In the spring of 2023, a man in Iowa was told he had throat cancer, stage 3. His doctors knew the drug that could treat it. It had been in use for decades. It cost about $16 a dose. They couldn't get it. Not because it was rare, not because it was new, because half of America's supply of it was made in one factory, and that factory had been shut down. This is a story about the medicine that isn't there when you need it. The empty shelf at the pharmacy. The prescription that can't be filled. We tend to imagine a drug shortage means we ran out of a drug, that it's suddenly hard to make. It usually isn't. These are old, simple medicines the world has known how to make for decades. They fall short because they're made in too few places, sometimes in only one. This is how that happens, and who pays for it. Start with a number. In the first 3 months of 2024, pharmacists in the United States were tracking 323 active drug shortages. It was the highest number ever recorded. Most of them were not exotic medicines. They were the cheapest, most ordinary drugs in the system. Generics, the ones that lost their patents decades ago. Antibiotics, anesthetics, the chemotherapy in the bag on the IV pole, and the drug in the crash cart that's meant to restart a stopped heart. The drugs most likely to run out are the drugs we depend on most and pay for least. To understand why, you have to follow one of them back to where it's made. In a place called Sanand in the Indian state of Gujarat, there is a pharmaceutical plant run by a company called Intas. Most Americans have never heard of it. But for one cancer drug, cisplatin, a platinum-based chemotherapy used against cancers of the lung, the bladder, the ovaries, the testicles, that one plant made roughly half of everything the United States used. In late 2022, inspectors from the US Food and Drug Administration arrived at the plant. They spent 9 days inside. What they found, in the agency's own words, was a cascade of failure in the plant's quality control. Records that didn't add up, raw data that was missing, test results that couldn't be trusted. The company halted production, and half of America's cisplatin went with it. When cisplatin ran short, doctors switched their patients to a sister drug, carboplatin. Intas made that one too, so the shortage didn't stay contained, it spread. By May of 2023, 93% of the cancer centers in one national survey reported they were short of carboplatin. 70% were short of cisplatin. One factory in Western India had faltered, and cancer wards across the United States began to ration. It would be comforting to think this was one bad factory. It wasn't. It was the shape of the whole system. A finished pill or vial is the last step in a long chain. Before it, someone has to make the active ingredient, the molecule that actually does something in your body. And before that, someone has to make the ingredient's ingredient, the raw chemical building blocks. Follow that chain backward and it narrows. India is the largest single source of the active ingredients in America's generic drugs. But the chain doesn't stop in India. The earliest steps, the basic chemistry those ingredients are built from, increasingly come from one place, China. So the pharmacy shelf in your town can rest on a factory in India, which rests on a chemical plant in China. 3 links, each one a place you'll never see, run by a company you'll never hear named, until the day it stops. Here is the part that sounds backward. The reason these drugs disappear is that they're cheap. Cisplatin sells for about $16 a dose. It has for years. A drug that cheap earns almost nothing for the company that makes it, so almost no one wants to make it. The ones who do run their plants flat out with no slack, because slack costs money. Which means when one plant goes down, there's no one holding spare capacity to catch the fall. A company that supplies 1/10 of the market has no reason to build enough to supply 1/3. The low price we treat as a bargain is the exact thing that makes the drug fragile. We decided it was too cheap to worry about. That decision is why it's gone. If cisplatin were the only case, you could call it bad luck. But go back to the winter before, late 2022. A wave of flu, RSV, and COVID hit the country at once. And with it came a run on the standard antibiotic for the most common reason children are given one at all: an ear infection, amoxicillin. The pink liquid in the bottle in the refrigerator door. Parents went from pharmacy to pharmacy and found the same answer: out of stock. The same pattern underneath: a cheap generic made by only a few manufacturers, its raw materials sourced an ocean away, with no cushion when demand rose. When the shelf emptied, doctors did what they could: splitting adult pills, reaching for stronger, broader antibiotics the child didn't otherwise need. A shortage doesn't always look like an empty ward. Sometimes it looks like a parent going from counter to counter after dark, trying to fill a prescription for a sick child. Come back to the man in Iowa. He was given carboplatin instead of the cisplatin his doctors wanted, the sister drug, the one that was also running out. For his cancer, they told him, it was the less effective of the two. He didn't choose that. No one in his exam room chose it. It was chosen years earlier and an ocean away, by a market that decided this medicine wasn't worth making much of, and a supply chain that ran it through a single plant. When that plant failed an inspection, the consequence traveled all the way down the chain, past the FDA, past the distributor, past the pharmacy, and came to rest on a person who had just been told he had cancer. He is where the supply chain ends. The specific shortage was declared over. Cisplatin is flowing again. The plant in Gujarat is shipping to the United States once more. But nothing underneath it changed. The drugs are still cheap. The plants still run without slack. The chain still narrows to a few points, in a few countries, that most of us will never think about. 3 years on, the people who study this are still asking Washington to fix the thing underneath, and warning in plain words that until it is, this will keep happening. The only question is which drug and when. We built a system that makes our medicine as cheaply as it possibly can. The medicine is already in the bottle, in the vial, in the bag on the IV pole. The only thing left to decide is whether we ever wanted to know what it cost to keep it that cheap.